And it seems to me that people of the land is being used, at its most extreme in that kind of way as well. An interesting example is a book by Jean Martinez Allier, Environmentalism of the Poor. And this is very, very interesting because he's also an anarchist. And all through the book he argues this very important position of what he calls the incommensurability of values, that you cannot have an objective valuation of environmental costs and benefits and so on, as conventional economics things. And then at the very end of the book he says, but God, when I'm talking about incommensurability of values, the world is falling apart. There's all this massive environmental destruction. So something has to be done. And he comes up with a formulation that is classically Leninist. It's like the old internet. Well, somebody has got to have the authority to decide, what really matters. And, if all these values, environmental values, are incommensurable, then, the world will go to ruin. So it does need some power that's going to say, this is the most important, and we have to do this now, and everybody will fall into line. I mean, to me, that reveals reveals the problem, the dilemma. So it's kind of interesting. I do hear echoes of this old, kind of Leninist thing with the people of the land. They will save us all.
Other questions or comments?
We know that one of the most effective tools of colonialism and capitalism was pushing people off the land, taking away their resources in order to turn them into vulnerable labor. One of the things that I think is difficult for me to fully agree with in your talk is the idea that somehow capitalism is a global, in every corner and recess, dominant discourse. I think that the very nature of the people of the land, the movimientos en tierra, things that you can read about in Slow Food, Zapatista movements in Mexico, and a couple of others that I could think of as well, are an example of communities that have another logic and another approach, and in part of that is the fact that they are rooted in the land. Do you not see it as dangerous to kind of have a totalizing discourse and saying that all is capitalism and these are the tools that you need in order to break it down, when in fact there is an incommensurability of the way in which you are seeing it with the way in which many people are living it? We're talking about the validation of other cultural modes of being that have not been extinguished, that are not reducible to capitalism. Isn't that dangerous in that analysis to make those kinds of assumptions?
Well, that's a very articulate statement of your position. I mean, I don't agree with that. I think when I was teaching in China, actually at Renmin University in July, and the students said, because they were intrigued, this person comes over from Europe and starts talking about Marxism. So, well, why are you a Marxist? I mean, nobody in China is a Marxist anymore. And I said, well, no, it's a very good question. It's a very basic one. We live in a particular world. That world is a creation of capitalism, in my view. And I think Marxism is the best way of understanding capitalism historically and how it works today. Now, the questions you've raised are resistance, basically. You're saying there's resistance from other ways of wanting to be and so on. But I think the list of examples you've given is, to me, more symptomatic of the problem than the solution. Because I've seen this before. I call it the list syndrome. Oh yeah, well, what about the Zapatistas in Chiapas, and the slow food movement, small-town bourgeois Italian food lovers. Well, great. I mean, I'd be happy to join them in a meal any time. Do I think that what they're doing is the same as what the people in Chiapas are doing? No. And a lot of romantic stuff written about movements which people have not investigated carefully enough. Famous example, Chipko movement in northern India. Another famous example in India, the KSS in Karnataka, hailed as India's Via Campesina equivalent. Why? Because the KSS in Karnataka opposed BT cotton. It opposed genetically modified cotton. Right on, so they're in the alliance. And because they come and tell you that they're the good guys, and you embrace them as the good guys, and you don't know about their class basis, the dynamics of the countrysides in which they farm and prosper in Karnataka, then you don't know very much. And Arun knows, Raj Patel, who may come and speak to you next year, he's given to lists. The KSS are among the good guys in his book. Now, I say is not convincing. I know comrades in India who would say it's criminal to include the KSS in the list of good guys, just because they're against BT cotton. But they want, what does the KSS want? It wants better fertilizer subsidies from the Indian government. They're not so green that they don't want to use chemical fertilizers. They want better subsidies on electricity to pump irrigation water and so on. So I think what I'm trying to do in the book is to show some of the complexities. And I think a lot of the counter examples are just not very convincing, or you have to look at them more carefully, or you can't lump them together in that way.